Welcome to the All Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Steve Inman, joined as always by star producer and co-host Chris Brito. The NBA preseason is underway, and we have less than 2 weeks to go before the start of the regular season. Chris and I are going to break down two more divisions, their over-unders, before we get to all that. Chris, my friend, how are you?
Hey, Stevie, baby. Listen, we just saw the first Knicks preseason game last night. Really excited to talk about that later on. But we're going to talk about some more divisions today. We're going to start with the Southwest Division. There are some interesting teams on that one, like the Mavericks, the Pelicans, the Grizzlies. So let's get started with that one. The Dallas Mavericks, they lost Brunson to us, to the Knicks. Right now, Vegas has them around 48.5 wins. I think they'll go over that number. I just think that, they showed a lot of defensive intensity last year with the playoffs and toward the end of last season. I see them making improvements, and I see them as a top three team in the West. And so, with the additions of Christian Wood and perhaps a bigger role for Spencer Dinwiddie, I see this being one of the better teams in the West and going over that number.
Yeah, this one was a really hard one for me because if you look at this team, I just don't think they have a lot of talent outside of Luka and Christian Wood. You've already seen some problems in training camp where basically Jason Kidd back in June said Christian Wood's going to be coming off the bench. And Christian Wood, when media camp open, goes, "That's news to me," even though we've all known about it for now, 4 months? So I'm curious, those two guys are going to have to get in a room and get things together where I think Wood can be an incredible weapon off the bench. Maybe a potential 6-man of the year candidate if he's willing to accept that role. And, obviously it's going to be difficult because, they were a great defensive team last year and that's not really part of his game. So I'm curious to see how he fits. If he fits in well, he adds a new dynamic that makes them much better offensively without potentially killing this defense. If that happens, you could take the over. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to take the under. I think the West, as you told me over and over, when we were going over our show, NBA is a lot better than it was last year. And I don't think the Mavericks really did enough. They added Christian Wood. They lost Jalen Brunson. I don't think it's enough. Under.
Okay, then. So next we have the Memphis Grizzlies. They're at 49.5 wins. This one was tough for me. I really do believe in the Grizzlies. I think they're a really good team, but I think last year's playoffs really exposed them. And I don't see them being as good just because, obviously they're going to make strides because they're a young team, but that they really improve that squad year to year. The only thing I could see them like potentially improving is maybe Ja Morant's shot selection. It's tough. It's tough. I just don't see them breaking that 49.5. I think, the same could be said about the Dallas Mavericks, but the whole conference improved. I don't know if the Grizzlies have necessarily kept up with that.
Yeah, I think this is very similar to what we just said with Dallas, where the West has gotten better, and I don't think they've really gotten much worse. They lost some role players like Slow-Mo, Kyle Anderson, but I just don't know if they've really improved themselves. And then on top of that, Jaren Jackson, who is always hurt, is already hurt. So, and they really I felt like they played a little over their heads when Ja Morant was hurt. I mean, they were the best team in basketball in those games for some reason during the regular season. I don't know if that's going to continue if he winds up missing a month or so. The way he plays at the rim, I don't think that's crazy to think he can miss a month. And because of that, I think they're still a threat. I think they're still a guaranteed playoff team, 1-6, but I'm going to take the under.
Okay, so then what about the Pelicans? They're at 44.5. I think we both agree that they're going to go over on this one. I think having an all NBA talent like Zion Williamson back in the fray will really improve this team. And I can't wait to see what it looks like with all the weapons. McCollum's there. Zion Williamson's going to be back. And then you have Ingram. This is a team that I think could really make some strides.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to have a big, big step up here. And obviously, it's going to depend on what is Zion's health. It's always going to come down to Zion's health because, for one, they're just a much better team when their best players on the court. But number two, we got to see, can Ingram and Zion play together at a high level? Because both of those guys have played their best basketball when the other one's off the court. And so seeing one, Zion back in this offense, and two, how those guys gel together, I think it's going to be crucial. I think this is a team that if they get off to a hot start, I think there's no stopping them. I think this over is a lock if they get off to a good start. And if not, and it looks like it's going to be a little bit of a grind to get all these offensive players gelling together, I think it's going to be close down to the wire. Luckily, you and I are going to be in New Orleans for one of those last games of the year, the second to last game against our New York Knicks, April 7th. So we might be watching to see if this over-under hits that night.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
All right, so then let's hover over toward.
I don't know if I said it, but I am taking the over.
Yeah. I'm taking the over on that one as well. The Houston Rockets. So this is going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA. Yeah. They're supposed to be at 23.5 wins. I actually like them. The over. I think we saw Jalen Green really show flashes of his offensive potential and his playmaking skills. I think with the addition of their new rookie, I think this is like a team that could easily, not easily, but they'll surpass that 23.5 number. Where do you fall with that?
It's just such a low number that I just think I'm going to take the over. I just think if Jabari Smith becomes a legit player, or Jalen Green takes a step, it's really hard to lose that many games. It's just such a low number that all you need to say is, can they not be the worst team in basketball? Can they not be the biggest train wreck of the tanking train wrecks? Right. So I'm going to take the over.
That's why I think that they will probably be the best tanking team besides the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, I mean, I think Detroit's going to improve this year. It looks like they're trying to improve. Like they brought in Bogdanovich. We'll get to them on a different show. But Houston, to me, just doesn't have the right pieces. Like, is Porter your point guard? If he is, I don't really know what the ceiling is on that kind of team. I think that's a team that reminds me a little bit of what the Philadelphia 76ers did when they were tanking, which was, let's bring in guys who could score and kind of sabotage the offense. And so I'm curious to see how that'll play out, right? But I think this one's going to be really close, but 23.5 is such a low number. I'm going to take the over.
And then finally, with the Southwest Division, we had the San Antonio Spurs, another tanking team. They're 24.5 wins. I think they're under. I just don't see the talent there. Like, how are they going to squeeze out more than 15 wins there? I just don't see it. I know there's Popovich, but it's clear to me.
So here's the question with the Spurs, Chris.
The magic is running out.
You have Popovich still. I know they claim they're tank, like their actions suggest they're tanking, but like, is Greg Popovich really going to try to have a 20-win season in his final season as the coach?
I think he's playing on bonus time. I don't think he necessarily is trying to
isn't he going to try to squeeze out every win he can? And this is a team, remember, they won 34 games last year, and all they did they lost Murray. Okay. But the rest of it, which is a big deal. He's an all-star.
They did. Okay.
He's an all-star. But is he going to cost them 10 games? Is he going to cost them 15 games? Maybe. But I think that's just, again, it's similar to Houston, where it's just such a low number that I'm going to take the over on the 24.5. It's just so low. They have to lose 10 more games than they did last year, and I just don't see it.
I think you're crazy.
So you're taking the under?
Oh, I am hammering the under on this one.
Okay, so is this the one you're most confident in this division?
I think so. I'd put them and the Mavericks as the two ones I'm most confident in.
Okay.
What about you?
I would say on this one, not really confident in any of these teams to hit that number one way or the other, but I would probably say I'm most confident in New Orleans. I think their offense is going to be fantastic, and Zion seems to be in good shape, and I'm for some reason convinced he's going to be healthy. I just am. I don't know why, but I am.
Okay, so let's talk about the Northwest Division. I think this one's a little bit more of a challenge in my book. The Nuggets are 51.5. I think they'll go over that number. I think they look really great, and I think Jamal Murray coming back will do wonders for this team that desperately needed a second scorer. Um, he looked he looked like he didn't like lose time at all the other night. Do you think that this team ends up having the best record in the West?
I don't. I think Murray is still going to be a challenge to come back to full strength,
Sure.
and he's not playing 82 games. We know Michael Porter's not playing 82 games. That's your core besides Jokic, right? So
Sure. But
I
you
think they're going to be great.
but as you know, like the Nuggets are the kings of like the regular season because of Jokic, and like they got that number without him, without them
Right.
last year.
Yes. And during those times, it was MVP runs. And we've noticed throughout basketball history, especially in the last 20 years, first MVP, okay. Second MVP doesn't really change the how hard it's judged. That third MVP, you basically got to average like 35 a game with like 15 rebounds to get that third straight MVP. It just doesn't happen. Like you saw Giannis, like guys put up better years than they did in the MVP year and then don't get any consideration. So I think it's going to be almost impossible for him to win this MVP. And because of that, I
I don't think
think
he's
they're,
trying to go for, I mean, necessarily going for that.
but I think because of that, they're finally going to treat him like, okay, let's take the play. Our focus is the playoffs. And so instead of playing him 82 games, I think they might play him 68 games. They might play him 70 games.
Does
They
he
might
need
try to
it?
give him a day here, a day there, and just make sure that he's at as close to 100% as he can for April, May, and June, which is not what they've done in the last few years. You saw the same thing with James Harden in Houston. He wins the MVP, right? And then they go, all right, this whole trying to win scoring titles and MVPs is great, but it's not really going to get us where we need to go. And so
Hmm.
because of that, I believe they're going to not really care about the regular season the way they have in years past. I'm still taking them over 51.5. I think it's a low number, but at the same time, I would not, to answer your question, I would not take them to be that number one seed in the West as you suggested.
Okay. All right. I just think that like Jokic has yet to be someone who like takes time off for rest reasons at this current juncture of his career. At least I haven't seen it yet. So that's the only thing. That to me, he's the only one that really matters in this equation. But otherwise, like what you're saying makes a lot of sense from a practical point of view. But I just don't see Jokic missing any time on purpose unless he gets injured. If he gets injured, that's a different story.
I mean, I think it's not really like Jokic going to the coaches and being like, hey, I'm worn down. Give me some time off. I think it's going to be the coaches going to him and go like, we need to get the most out of you in April, May, and June. How do we do that? I think it maybe 60, what I say, 65, 70 game. Maybe it's 75 games instead.
Okay.
Um, especially as he starts to get older. But at the same time, I think 10 games off in the regular season could make a difference between a 1 seed and a 3 seed. Because without him, they're not really going anywhere. So I
True.
think it's probably a smart move for them. And I also think it makes me a little worried about betting that over, but I would still do it anyway.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Now we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, our good friend Mitch's favorite team. That they had a really interesting playoff run, but some of those pieces have long gone away. They added Rudy Gobert as we've talked about on other podcasts, and as you all know, um, this team is slated to is at 48.5 wins. I think they also go over. You have them as over. I think that this team is going to be a menace defensively, uh, perhaps an offensive team. I don't know what they're going to look like on offense, but I suppose it doesn't really matter if you have, as long as Anthony Edwards is the focal point of that offense.
Yeah, I think this team is really good. I think this team with Gobert might be the regular season darling, where they got off to the 20 and 11 start, and we're talking about them as could they be a contender? Could they to win the championship, right? I don't think they're a contender. I do think they're going to be a great regular season team. I mean, Anthony Edwards is in his early 20s. He can continue to get better. He will continue to get better. I think Towns, with less pressure on him, can play the best basketball of his career. And then he also doesn't have to guard the rim. That's Rudy Gobert's job. And because of that, I think you're going to get more out of Towns offensively, even though you're already getting so much out of him. So I think those three guys are going to be incredible. And then don't forget D'Angelo Russell contract year. Let's see how he fits into this offense as now the third guy on offense, fourth guy overall. But I'm curious to see how that plays out. And I think this team is going to have arguably one of their most fun seasons in franchise history. And good for them, good for Mitch, good for A-Rod, good for everybody involved, and over 48.5 wins.
All right, so then we have the Portland Trailblazers are at 39.5 wins. I had a lot of trouble with this one, and I'm a big Damian Lillard fan, as you know. Did this team improve enough that they're accustomed to being a play-in team? It's hard to say. I think I'm not one to doubt Lillard, but I think his injury is kind of like I need to see it before I make my judgments on it. That being said, I just have so much belief in Dame that he'll like pull the carcass of any team and like do the best he can with it. You have Jeremy Grant at a non-guard number 2 that he can rely on. You also have Simmons, who they signed to a big contract in this offseason. So some interesting pieces there. I'm okay with going to over.
Yeah, I think this one's a lock to be over. This is one I'm most confident in any of the ones we've talked about. Look, Damian Lillard wins games. Damian Lillard wins regular season games. And, in his career over the last 9 years, they've been under this number twice. One was the bubble year, and the second was last year where he basically didn't play. He had the abdominal injury. He didn't come back. They decided, wait a second, why are we forcing our aging superstar back in a season we're not going anywhere when we can just tank? That's why they won 27 games. And I think because of that, this number is lower than it should be. Simons was really good. Jeremy Grant's a really good role player. Nurkic is back to full health. I think those 4 guys are going to be a really solid, tough team. And I think this is a 45 win team out west.
Do we know how their rookie is looking like?
I haven't heard anything about him at all. And, when he came into the draft as like the most raw of any of the players, where basically Kentucky said he wasn't ready to play for us. So I don't expect him to really play much at all for this. We're going for it veteran team. And we'll start hearing his name attached to a couple of first round picks to try to go get superstar wing X at the deadline with the Blazers.
If it's any consolation, Damian Lillard said that he's a lot more talented than him at 19 years old. But he
that's
showed
something
in his preseason game. So
yeah, I mean, Shaedon Sharpe, it's crazy because he's not even 20 years old yet. He is 2003 kid, and that is crazy. And even if he doesn't play much, that doesn't mean he's going to be a bust. It just means that they're trying to go for it and maximize Damian Lillard's, window of contention for some reason. Because God forbid, you win 45 games versus 25 games, it's really not going to make much of a difference. All right, next team. We have the Utah Jazz. Chris, you and I hammered the under on this when it was, at 30-31. Now, no Donovan Mitchell. They, traded Pat Bev away to 24.5 wins. What do you think?
I still think it's an under. I just don't, again, it's kind of like the Spurs. I just don't know how they're going to manufacture wins. Like, at some point, these tanking teams are yeah, sure, they're going to face each other, but I see Utah on the other side of that, where I just don't see, like, is Jordan Clarkson going to score 30 points while he's still on the team?
He's going to try.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, the most inefficient 30-point season you've ever seen.
He's still going to try. Who's even left? Mike Conley.
There's not much here.
Yeah. Like, this is like Mike Conley's going to get traded, I hope.
Yeah, I agree. I think the second Conley comes out and shows that he's semi-healthy, I think some team takes a chance on him. My guy, Ojai Abaji, I think he's a pretty good role player. He's not a guy you're going to ask to score 20 points a game. And luckily for him, luckily for us KU fans, he's going to get a lot of minutes for this really bad team. And this is a bunch of weird vets and then like young guys you're not sure can play. It's a really weird group. Colin Sexton's kind of one of those guys I would love to have on my team if I was tanking, where he's going to put up a sexy 20 points a game, and yet it's not going to contribute to any winning at all. He hasn't passed the ball. And so I think this might be the worst team in basketball. We kept talking about, okay, is it Houston? Is it San Antonio? I think those teams have more talent here. And I think there's really not much more for those teams to strip down. There is more for the Utah Jazz to strip down. They can trade Malik Beasley. They can trade Jordan Clarkson. They can trade Mike Conley. This can get worse. And I think they want it to get worse. I think they're trying to get as many draft picks as they can and maximize their chance to go get Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson. And because of that, we got the under at 30, 31 and a half. We're going to take it again here at what is it, 23 and a half? 24 and a half. So 24 and a half under for Chris and I. Lastly, Chris, for this division, how would you rank it?
We need to go to the Thunder as well.
Oh, yeah. You had a different order than me. Okay, Oklahoma City. I would say here over, and I say that because this team is much better than people give it credit for. And the reason I say that is because every year they're kind of pretty okay. They're frisky. Last year, when they beat the Lakers the first 3 times they faced them when the Lakers were in contention, right? And every year they're like 19 and 22, 20 and 22, and they go up, got to shut everybody down, shut everything down. And that's what they do. And I think they'll do that again this year. But, Josh Giddey and SGA continue to get better. I think those, that's one of the more sneaky, underrated backcourts in the entire league. They're going to have teams come in and just not take them seriously, especially on these like long West Coast trips. I think they're going to, steal and then win 25 games. I would take the over.
It's an under for me. I think Presti will find a way to make this team lose games. And I think that it's just when you have a team like the Spurs, when you have a team like the Jazz, when you have a team like potentially the Pacers that are going to be pacing toward a very poor record, and if the Thunder want any chance at the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, you need to lose the same amount of games that them or be on pace with them. So I just don't see it. I think they're going to go under.
We'll see. I mean, they have the talent, in my opinion, to be over, but it's really just about desire, and they have no desire to be over this number. And for that reason, you might be right there. Okay, so let's rank these teams. Let's start with the Southwest. Dallas, Houston, Memphis, New Orleans, Spurs. How do you see that group playing out?
All right, I'm going to go with the Mavericks winning the division, then the Grizzlies. I'd probably go Pelicans, Rockets, Spurs. And then for the Northwest, I probably have this one's tough.
It is tough.
Nuggets, Wolves, Blazers, Thunder, Jazz.
Okay, the Northwest, I have it exactly the way you just did. For Southwest, I would say Memphis, New Orleans, Dallas.
Wow.
Spurs, Rockets. I don't think the Mavs are that good. And they're a Luka month injury away from being like a disaster for that time. And
I actually think
they're going to miss Jalen Brunson more than people think.
I think this is Luka's MVP season.
I said that the last 2 years. I've been very wrong. I'm not doing it again this year. I think it's going to be that's tough. I might give it to Tatum. I really would. I think now that they got the finals, I think they're going to get the recognition. The only other guy I thought of was Embiid, and you're already hearing the hype of James Harden's healthy. James Harden looks in shape. And so because of that, I think it's going to take some credit away from Embiid. And it's a narrative award because, 8, 9, 10 guys in the league every year put up MVP numbers. And yet only 2 or 3 really are considered for it.
Here's my only thing that I wouldn't give it to Tatum. I think Tatum needs to score significantly more points than Brown.
Agreed.
Uh, Needs to probably average more than 5 assists, more than 6 assists. Um, and needs to lead the NBA in some category. Maybe Tatum leads the league in scoring, and that's how he wins it. But like, I can already see like, oh, with all the controversy with the team, blah blah blah, blah, Tatum leading the way for the Celtics to be the best team.
Exactly.
But I could see the same narrative for Luca. Luca, like, okay, Luca lost his
His running mate,
his
Jalen Brunson.
running mate, Jalen Brunson. But now the Dallas Mavericks are the best team in the West when many thought the Clippers were going to be the best team in the West.
Yeah, that is a good point. Okay, preseason, Chris. Is there anything you're really watching or monitoring here?
So I think the Knicks are going to win the NBA Finals after yesterday's
There we
preseason.
go.
You know what? I just really liked how Jalen Brunson looked, and I'm aware that it's against the Detroit Pistons, but just the way that he sort of already feels like he's been part of the club for a long time, gets to the rim at ease, opens up the floor for the rest of his teammates. Again, it's only been one game, so how much can you say? I thought Derrick Rose looked really spry and looked quick. I mean, it's Derrick Rose,
He
but
hasn't played in 6 months. I hope so.
he
This is
hasn't
the
played.
time to look spry.
But he also lost weight, and you can see that. Um, those are some of the early highlights, but you don't want to read into it too much because it's the preseason. God forbid.
Yeah. For the 6th year in a row, I caution everyone to beware of the preseason hype. It's around, it's everywhere, and it only really matters in a couple of weeks. That's really, unfortunately, what it is.
Fair enough.
All right, Chris, let's get to our final thoughts right after this. All right, Chris, final thoughts time here. Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson look fantastic Tuesday evening. The tanking is going to be really intense. Do you believe the hype so far for these two?
Oh, I totally do. I mean, at least with Victor, I think he looks amazing for his size and his like skills, and he's all that's advertised for someone so young and so, incredibly talented. Um, in terms of Scoot, he looks fine. Looks like many like generic sort of like talented scoring guards. I'm sure he's going to be a great NBA player one day. I just think next to somebody like Victor Wembanyama, it's just like I've never seen that before, and I think I'm just so like amazed by what he could look on the NBA court one day.
Yeah, I mean, people keep saying over and over that he looks like a combo of Durant with Rudy Gobert, and I was like, come on, he's not going to shoot like Durant. He's too frail to be a Rudy Gobert. And then you watch him, and you're like, oh wait, there might be something there. That might be right. And it's fun because like the last couple of years in the draft, we've had some really, really good players, but there hasn't been that franchise changing player where people are basically falling all over themselves to lose as many games as they can since Zion. And that was now a few years. That was what he's in his 4th year now. So obviously it's going to be fun because it gives these loser teams that are not going anywhere a reason to have hope because one of them is going to be changed forever with him most likely.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I almost wish that the Knicks were part of the tanking, just because I'm so enthralled by like what.
Why would you want to be part of the tanking? We're winning 39 games this year. Wouldn't you rather be fighting for a 10 seed?
I mean, listen, you can never make Knicks fans happy, so
You can by having a plan. That's all we ask for. Just a plan and a good plan. And we'll leave it at that.
But does a plan sell tickets?
They're always going to sell tickets.
That's also true.
I mean, they put up tanking garbage teams out there. They put up mediocre teams. They put up stuff in between, and they've always sold out. That's just what they do, and they will continue to do it. It's Madison Square Garden, and people are desperate to see any remnants of good Knick basketball.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right, Chris. Russell Westbrook again in the news about trade rumors. There's talk of a potential deal with the Pacers, where the Pacers offered Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, some kind of salary filler for Westbrook and the 2 first-round picks unprotected. The Lakers are like thinking about it, but it seems like as of now, they're going to go into the season with Westbrook. Do you see this trade happening or any other trade within the next couple months?
I just think that this front office is so unpredictable. I think they're trying to recoup value for Russell Westbrook, but I don't think anybody else shares the same vision as they do. Even if Russell were to retain some form of his star self, like who's gonna give up anything of value for him? Um, it's make without attaching those 2 first-round picks with him. I think he does end up being the starter for this team for the Lakers to start the season. It's anyone's guess what's going to happen for the rest of the season with the Lakers, though.
It's just upsetting because they seem to believe that Darwin Ham is going to be the difference between Russ having a good season and a bad season. And I just think if Russ is not willing to change his role and become a role player who provides energy, whether it's in the starting lineup or off the bench, and starts trying on defense, I just don't see him having any positive value for the Lakers. And I don't think they're going to ever bench him because of how much money he's making. And so if I were them, I think this trade with the Pacers, yes, it's a lot to give up at your last 2 chips. And those are going to be good draft picks because LeBron will be way gone. But I think it's probably worth it. I really do, because this is, if the goal is to try to win another championship around LeBron James, you bring in 2 shooters and 2 guys who can really help offensively. I think that's the way to do it. And all of a sudden, Pat Bev and Austin Reeves are pretty good role players around that group. I would do it, but I don't really think they think Westbrook is as big of a problem as people make it out to be.
Oh, that's clear.
Yeah. All right. Last thing, Chris, Tyler Hero finally got his bag. 4 years, $130 million. And I get the cap is going up and all these things, but that is so much money, especially when you compare it to how RJ Barrett got significantly less. And I would probably take Barrett over Hero for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I don't like that deal at all for the Heat, who somehow find a way to get money for their players. Um, and it just makes you think that if you're RJ Barrett, do you feel a little bit screwed over by the Knicks? You dangled him in trade talks. You end up signing him to a big contract that ends up being significantly less than his peers. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to have him at that good rate, no matter how his career ends up being, but everything seems to indicate that he's on a trajectory going up. Even his shootings could improve. So
Yeah.
so I'm with you. I'm happy that we gave him the contract that we did.
And it's crazy because, 3, 4, 5 years from now, you're going to start seeing superstars signed for $65 million a year. And all of a sudden you're going to say, oh, Tyler Hero makes $30 million a year. RJ Barrett makes $27 million a year. Those are going to look like
What a
$15
bargain.
million a year. They're going to look real cheap. So yes, it's a big giant number right now, but it might not look like a giant number when those contracts are up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anything else you got for us, Chris, before we wrap up the show?
Nobody. Just looking forward to the NBA season. It looks like we're getting a lot of players that were injured back, like Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi looks fine, looks great too. As I mentioned, Jamal Murray is back. Then we have some players like James Wiseman coming back for the Warriors.
Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons looked great the other night too. I think there's a case to be made that the Nets or the Celtics are the best team in the East.
Yeah,
That
I'm
that
with you there. And for some reason, I'm starting to get on the Philly bandwagon. I really believe that they're going to be really good this year. I'm buying the James Harden hype.
Okay. So then
Yeah.
we have a lot to talk about then.
Yes, we do. We're going to break down 2 more Eastern Conference divisions next week, and then we'll finish it off a week after with our Atlantic division with our New York Knicks. So that's going to do it for us here on the All Who's podcast. Chris, thank you so much as always. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
watching.
buddy.
Thank you for watching on YouTube and listening on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast. And we'll be back next week.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.